Welcome to the Slow Wine Guide 2021. I'm here with Sam Lewis from Samuel Lewis Smith Wines. Welcome.
Hey, Deborah, how are you?
I'm great, and I'm so happy to welcome you to the guide as a new producer to the guide for 2021, and I'm dying to get into these wines. So we've got 3 wines that are going to be featured, and we're going to start with your Chardonnay.
Awesome. Yeah, so just to kind of give a quick synopsis of SLS. SLS kind of functions as a micro-negociant. I work with this terroirs and down the Central Coast, starting in the Santa Rita Hills and finishing in the Santa Cruz Mountains. So the first wine is my 2018 Chardonnay from Zante Vineyard in the Santa Rita Hills. Zante is kind of right in the heart of the Santa Rita Hills, on the kind of the beginning of the middle spine of the parcel. The specific parcel that this Chardonnay comes from is a steep north-facing clay slope. The entire vineyard is organically farmed. It's certified organic, but I think this particular block is really special because of its north-facing aspect. It kind of creates this cooler climate within an already cool climate, which in some of these warmer years certainly is a pretty big attribute. So and kind of my intention for this wine is to kind of balance both the richness that the clay soil really lends itself to, while maintaining this tension and energy that I think is kind of part and parcel to most Santa Rita Hills Chardonnays. Like I said, it's a predominantly clay terroir in this block, but littered throughout the block is chert, which is like a silica based entry rock.
Yeah, we've got some here in my neck of the woods.
Yeah, so this is what it looks like. It's kind of this stratified sedimentary rock. We call it chert. If you were in the Loire Valley of France, you'd say it's silex, but they're quite similar. And it's just, it's a really interesting vineyard, and it has this great tension, but also this really kind of intense, florality, and sometimes even a tropicality. So it's kind of this balance of opposites.
Absolutely, definitely picking up on some stone fruit right away. But then there's like this kaffir lime leaf and this real saline mineral note on the finish. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing with ML on this wine, and how and what your regime, your oak or aging regime is for the wine.
Yeah, sure. So this wine is fermented and aged in French oak. A small portion of that is new, about 20%. The balance is neutral. So, fermented aged oak, but one of the ways that I naturally balance or maintain that tension is by, typically arresting the mallow at a certain point where I find that balance between, richness and kind of silkiness on the palate, as well as high acid. So this particular vintage is about 50% malolactic. So it's got a couple grams of malic acid left, and that definitely accentuates the orchard fruit, the quince, the green apple, but it has enough it has richness and creaminess to kind of satisfy that traditional Chardonnay character. Yeah, so it's in barrel for about 9 months. I do filter it because it's got quite a bit of malic acid left, but everything else done pretty naturally. Native primary and secondary fermentations, minimal sulfur. The pH is typically pretty low, so again, that requires a fairly low level of sulfur to keep it fresh, keep it stable for long periods of time.
Great. Well, we love that. Just naturally kind of stable and keeping the sulfur low is always good news. So it's delicious, and I don't even want to put it down, but we got to move on. So now we're moving into red territory, to Pinot Noir, wine number 2. is your Pinot Noir, and I've got a 2018 from Monterey County. So can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so 2018 Montanita de Oro Pinot. Montanita is kind of my proprietary name. Montanita, little mountain, and de Oro means gold, so it's the little mountain of gold. And this wine kind of highlights two of what are to me the most compelling terroirs in Monterey. One is at the top of the Abilene Mountains, in a mainly granitic soil, though it has some limestone as well. It's called Coast Vineyard. That's 50% of the blend, and then the other half comes from Pelio Vineyard, which is northwest of the Carmel Valley appellation. So it's much cooler, much more windswept, basically right at the top of Lorelli, if you know the area. And this vineyard is planted in a clay that's really rich in a diatomaceous shale. So, shale is basically a compacted,
Sedimentary, yeah.
Sedimentary rock. And, our version of that has varying percentages of diatomaceous earth. And diatoms are, of course, fossilized sea plankton. So it definitely, it gives that structure, kind of that minerality that I think most of us Pinot Noir lovers are always searching for.
We're after it for sure.
Yeah.
There's this gorgeous kind of tangerine zest or tangy kind of dried orange peel note to this wine that is just such a specific marker for me of this wine. It is something I love to find in Pinot Noir.
Yeah, totally. So what I love about this wine, especially is that it really has that yin and yang, and I think that's from the two very different terroirs, from the Coast View Vineyard and the Pelio Vineyard, that shale and the granite. The granite gives a lot of structure, but it lends itself to a slightly more red fruited wine.
There's definitely a lot of red fruit here.
Yeah, and the Pelio is a much more darker fruit, but more feminine, kind of softer, slightly more generous. So those two definitely complement one another, and they both hold up really well to whole cluster fermentation, which I think in its best uses, it really helps to lift the wine. It gives the wine a little bit more structure, of course. And it helps to kind of, detract a little bit from what can potentially be, an almost obtrusively fruity California wine. So
yes, this your Pinot is not overtly fruity. Now, you told me a little bit about your aging regime here, and I know you prefer Francois Frere for this particular wine. So talk a little bit about that and what percentage you're using and how you feel it finishes the wine.
Yeah, totally. So, on the skins for about 7 to 10 days, and then pressed into oak, and it spends about 10 months. In French oak, 25% is new, and the balance of 75% is neutral. So, I like the oak, much more as a structural component than adding sweetness and spice to the wine, because I definitely get enough of the spice from the stems. But a little bit of sweetness does help to kind of round out the palate, give it a little bit more length. And most of the oak that I'm using is medium toast, so it's not overtly sweet or cloying. It just kind of helps bolster all the other components.
Wow. Well, it's really very distinct and very different. And we've got to attribute that, to the terroir, which is very specific. Granite and diatomaceous earth are not your average bears when it comes to Pinot Noir terroir. And of course, your intention and style for this wine, it's really very, very distinct. Great. So wine number 3, we're going to an entirely different terroir with wine number 3, and this is your Syrah from Santa Cruz Mountains, and this is the 2018.
Right. So, like I said, my lineup is kind of a tour of the mountainous terroirs of the Central Coast. starting from the south and going north. So this is our kind of our last stop, so to speak. And this is, again, it's a blend of two different vineyards in the Santa Cruz Mountains. One in the kind of the Corralitos sub-ABA, so very low elevation, super close to the coast. It's one of the coldest climate vineyards that I work with. And then another is much kind of more centrally located in the central southern Cruz Mountains, still on the western side. That vineyard's called Zante. So, Galley, which is that first vineyard, is planted in a kind of a clay loam that is derived from weathered sandstone, and that gives this kind of dark fruit, lots of texture, lots of pepper, lots of florality.
Oh, you bet.
And then the Zante Vineyard is the other 50% component of this wine.
This is a higher elevation vineyard, right? This is a 1,200
Yeah,
feet.
it's planted about 1,300 feet. Totally legendary site. This, farmed organically from day one. It's own rooted. It's dry farm. It really kind of has all of those cool, compelling aspects of totally, mountain kind of rugged viticulture. And it definitely helps to support that kind of brooding character that I get from the Galley fruit.
Oh, wow. It's just rock star. There's so much black pepper and dark fruit and graphite, but yet it's lean and it's very lithe and just really a really expressive, cool climate Syrah for sure. And not, a little screechy. Sometimes when they're not quite ripe, they can be a little screechy. That's not the case here at all.
Right.
So
So these are, both sites are fairly cool. Galley, especially in Corralitos, but they're naturally, the vines are naturally, their yields are regulated. Really good ripeness at low alcohol. This one comes in at about 12.9% alcohol, so pretty low in the grand scheme of things, but it doesn't come off as underripe or vegetal, and I attribute that to that kind of vine balance. Still great acidity, but totally ripe flavors. And again, I really like to kind of enhance the florality and the spice component by quite a bit of whole cluster fermentation. This is about 85% whole cluster. You never know. It doesn't, it's not bitterly tannic. It's not super green. It's just, it adds this kind of extra layer of complexity that I think otherwise is somewhat unattainable.
Wow. Well, again, another very distinct expression of a cool climate Syrah, unlike anything I've tasted this year for sure. So these wines are so very much you in their style, and that's that distinctness and that level of expression is really the art in winemaking, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, totally. This wine is to me kind of the Pinot Noir of Syrah. So, it's lifted, it's floral, but it still has that dark side that I think any Syrah drinker is looking for, especially cool climate Syrah drinkers. So.
Absolutely. And they're going to find it in this bottle. Well, Sam, I can't thank you enough for being with us today and for the beautiful samples. Thank you so much. They're absolutely delicious, and I'm looking forward to exploring them and tasting them a couple more times before I finish my notes. But we would like to welcome you to the 2021 Guide, and we look forward to seeing you next year.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Thanks. Take care.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.